I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Hello, ladies, and welcome to Women Awakening. And we are here to celebrate women because we are changing lives, families, communities, and this world one woman at a time. I am so excited that I get to introduce you to extraordinary women that inspire me, uplift me, and remind me how incredible it is to be a woman on the planet at this time. So my guest today is Geneen Roth. Aside from loving her, I got to tell you who she is. She's the author of 10 books, including her newest book, This Messy Magnificen Life, and #1 New York Times bestsellers, Women, Food, and God, When Food is Love, Lost and Found, and The Craggy Hole in My Heart and the Cat Who Fixed It. Over the last 30 years, she's worked with thousands of people in her groundbreaking retreats and workshops. She's appeared on a lot of shows, Oprah Winfrey Show, 2020, The Today Show, Good Morning America, and The View. She lives in California with the charms of hummingbirds, her fabulous husband, Matt, and Izzy, the fabulous eating disordered dog. Geneen, welcome. I am so glad you're here.
Thanks, Cynthia. I am so glad to be here with you. So glad.
Well, you're just such an inspiration on a lot of levels for a lot of people. But I guess I want to start by asking you to tell us, a little bit about where you came from, your history, because a lot of times people look at people who've achieved what you have and they think they just leaped into it, that it just dropped in or they came here with silver spoons in their mouths and they just walked through the doorways. What's your history?
Well, let's see. My history is a lot of pain and suffering. No, I actually don't think it's an essential ingredient for people to grow. But in my particular case, having come from a very challenging childhood with a mother that was miserable and drug addicted and alcohol addicted and a dad that wasn't home and ingredients of sexual abuse and physical abuse and a very, very strong yearning to find out what else there was beside that. So I think it began there. Also, my issues with food began there. I started compulsively eating when I was 11, went on my first diet, and then gained and lost over the next 17 years, well over 1,000 pounds, probably more than 1,000 pounds, until I got to a low point. This is where the extreme misery comes in, where I really wanted to kill myself. And I think when I realized that I really didn't want to go on like that, and I didn't feel like I had a choice, but I did realize that the other choice was, I could stop depriving and shaming myself, at least around food. I wasn't sure I could do it in the rest of my life, but I didn't have to keep dieting. And so that's when I stopped dieting. And that's when change started happening for me around food.
It's so incredible to hear you say this, Geneen, because, I came from a pretty crazy childhood too, with violence and drama and abuse and addiction and all kinds of stuff. And I remember being in a similar place one day thinking, why am I on this planet? And that was the choice point of saying, well, what are you going to do? Right. So anybody who's listening to this, wherever you are, even if it feels like you're rock bottom, there's a way out. You get to choose. And so did you know you were a writer when you were young?
I wrote my first story when I was in 5th grade. Mrs. Epstein was her name. And she had a big gap between her two front teeth, which I loved, and very curly brown hair. And she asked everybody to write a story. And I did. And I wrote about this girl my age who saves an airplane from being crashed. I don't quite remember any more particulars of that story, but what I do remember was the feeling of joy and the feeling of being transported to another world, to a world that had to do with creating words and creating stories, and was no longer in the family's world that I was growing up in. And you would think really that would have been enough to make me decide, or to inspire me to decide that I was going to be a writer, but it didn't. I did write a book soon after that about John F. Kennedy, and I wrote poems, and I wrote in my journal, which I called my journal Bubbles. And I just found this journal recently, Dear Bubbles. And then it would go on with what happened that day. Love ya is how I ended every single journal entry. There were feathers from my parakeet named Cookie, appropriately. And the first time I got kissed and things like that. But it took many years of trying so many things. Even though I knew I loved writing, I never felt like I could be a writer. I would walk into bookstores and I'd see books and I'd think, no way. There's not little me being able to do that. It seemed like it was like flying to Mars, going from where I was to actually writing and publishing a book. And it wasn't until I tried so many other things, being a maid in a dishwasher, being an astrologer, being an avocado and cheese sandwich maker, tutoring chemistry, which I was terrible at. I can't even believe I did that. And all kinds of things. And then applied for social work school, got in, and I had 6 months in between that moment and when school was supposed to start. And I told myself I could do anything I wanted to do. And the only thing I wanted to do was write. And so I started a writing class with a woman named Ellen Bass. And after the first or second week, I realized I was hooked, and I didn't care what it took. I was going to be writing for the rest of my life. So that's actually what started it.
Well, and you're so amazingly disciplined. I mean, it's so amazing to me. You have a space for your writing and you dedicate time for your writing, because I tell people, if you're going to be a writer, you have to write. If you're going to be anything, you have to do that, so it's inspiring to me that you're so dedicated. So here's the thing. Your first book goes to number 1, right?
No, not my first book. No, my first book was Feeding the Hungry Heart.
Oh, okay.
That book had been rejected by 26 publishers.
Oh.
And not only that, I had lied in the book proposal. I had told those 26 publishers, I copied how to do proposals out of this book called The Writer's Market, and I did it exactly. And then I sent it off to 26 New York publishers, and I got all those rejections, except for one who wrote back to me and said, we'd love to see we like your proposal. Now please send us 50 pages of your manuscript. And I wrote back and I said, oh, no problem. Coming any day. Well, I didn't have a manuscript. And the second she said, send me your manuscript, I froze. I went into complete terror and I couldn't write. And so after lying to her for a month or 6 weeks, I finally wrote her, the editor, Peg Parkinson, and said, I've been lying. I do not have a manuscript. I am such a nervous wreck at this point that I do not care if I ever write another word as long as I live. Thank you. Goodbye. And she wrote back to me. Actually, she called me and said, Oh, I forgot this. I had already met her on one of my trips to see my family in New York. I wormed my way in for a 5-minute meeting with her. I carried a briefcase that was totally empty. I bought a suit for $25 at a bargain store. And I walked in with a navy blue suit, an empty suitcase that had a brush in it, and looked like I really knew what I was doing. But we liked each other right away. And when she called me after getting that letter, she said, I believe in you and you can do this. Just send me what you've got when you've got it. And she was my angel, really. And after that, I sat down and I wrote for a couple of months. And I only had to write half the book because it was really an anthology, and sent it to her. She loved it and she accepted it. And that was that.
Well, okay, there's a few things I want to dissect here. Okay, first of all, that you looked at a template and followed it. Second thing, that you picked out 26 places to send the book, even though you didn't know what you were doing. And even though you got rejected, when you got the one, it was like, great. But then it was like what we all do. It's like, oh, they said yes. Now what? But what I love is that you had dressed up, had the briefcase, and walked in there. I can't tell you how many auditions I walked into acting like I knew what the heck was going on.
Right.
Right. But I love that you were honest and authentic, because, I don't know this woman at all, but I'm sure your authenticity touched her heart.
Yeah. It was a good match. We loved each other. And then she wrote me after that first book was published, and it didn't do much. In fact, I was on, this is going to really date me, but so what? I was on a show called The Merv Griffin Show. And that was the first and only national show I had ever been on. And I was on with a woman named Carol Shaw, who wrote a book and a magazine, edited a magazine called Big Beautiful Woman. And she apparently had been on television 100,000 times before. And I hadn't ever been on television, not even once. And I sat down and she took over the interview completely. And I could barely get a word in. And I left that interview and I cried and I cried and I cried. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I've had quite a few television interviews like that. Another one was the Phil Donahue show, where that was a couple years later, where I did not do well. Believe me, I did not do well. So I have had as many so-called failures as I've had successes. And it's been hard to learn. It's been hard to think of those failures as learning opportunities. I haven't always, but really that experience, both on the Merv Griffin show and the Donahue show, showed me what I needed to practice, what I needed to learn that I didn't know how to do, which was learn how to be on television.
Well, and I think that that's something that's so important. It's like, we don't come in with an encoded message. This is how you write. This is how you do interviews. This is
right.
And sometimes you soar and other times you don't. But what I love is, and this is what I've learned from you, is that just because you've had a New York Times bestseller, you don't stop. You don't just go, oh, well, I've arrived. I have watched you over and over continue to write, continue to tell stories of your ups and your downs. What I love is that you tell the truth about your life. I've been reading your chronicles. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to let her tell you what they are, but it's amazing.
Right. So just about writing for a second, I want to say that long periods go by where I don't write, because the writing that I do, I have to learn something from I have to have some lived experience between the last time I wrote whatever I wrote and now. And I've been told many times, you have to keep writing, you have to keep writing, you have to put a book out every 2 years. You can't stop, you can't stop. And I have gone through a lot of moments of darkness, thinking that I should be writing more than I'm writing. But I also know a truth, which is that I love to write, that writing thrills me, and that when I leave myself alone, I flourish. Now, the Cancer Chronicles that you've been talking about a year ago, and you were so wonderful with me and my community, which you are, of course, part of around this. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. 2 days ago was the year anniversary of me finishing the last radiation treatment. So it was sort of new. And so for 6 months, I didn't write about it at all because I needed to process, digest, get over the shock and the fear. I mean, no, not get over the fear, sort of meet the fear in a different way than I was. I don't think you get over it. I think you meet it, you feel it. If you can't welcome it, you at least accept it and acknowledge where it lives in your body and are kind to it instead of wanting to get rid of it. And so I started those Cancer Chronicles when I was ready to speak about it, when I was ready to say the smallest thing about it. And then, surprising to me, they've turned into this blooming of just unexpected things that cancer has not been the only thing that's knocked me upside my head. First, it was compulsive eating. Then it was a couple of car accidents where I ended up in a wheelchair. Then it was losing all of our money in 2008. And now it was cancer. And so I have worked with cancer, and that's what the Chronicles are about. They're both about the fear and the terror and the love, and using what's here as an opening to the heavenly invisibles, as Mary Oliver would call them. What's the life beneath the life, the pain that this opens, well, the doorway that this opens to. Yes. And so that's the grace of that.
Well, I think it's so important, many years ago, I did a one-woman show that was really the story of my life. And it was a lot of the ups and the downs and the craziness that I went through to get to this place. And I didn't know it at the time, but what happened was that play became a gift to other people to know, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And I think that that's what you exemplify. If someone that has reached this level of success can fall and get up and fall and get up, I can fall and get up and fall and get up, and it's okay. And I want to say, I just want to talk a little bit about the fact that you have an extraordinary community of people that love and support you walking through some of these.
Yes. And what I write about in that first Cancer Chronicle is that I'm a catastrophizer. I know you're not. Thank God you're not. I mean, you have such a firm sense of holiness, and I go straight to the sky is falling. And not only that, it already fell, and tomorrow it's going to fall worse than today, and then the next day it's going to go like that. So when I thought about catastrophe, like if I ever did get diagnosed with cancer, or something happened, like we lost our money, or or I was in a car accident, and these things keep happening. I think until I learn what there is to learn here, I must have this very hard head. I think I'm getting it finally, that love abounds. But before the cancer, I thought nobody's going to show up. nobody is going to, who's going to show up. I didn't really know that I was loved and that people would show up. And it's been through having had cancer, and I put this in the past because I don't have it anymore, that I have been able to take in the love. And that probably is the biggest gift that cancer has given me, which is love. And also knowing that I will survive, and I will survive. I was surviving with the cancer, and I'm thriving without the cancer, but I was also thriving with the cancer too. Yeah. So it wasn't the end. And it's just been a stunning experience. It's not over yet. And that's what the Cancer Chronicles are about, the doorway that this has opened up for me. Yeah.
Well, it's incredible. And it's going out to so many people who are being inspired by it. And what it says to me, especially, with everything everybody's been through with the pandemic and everything, that I love that thing that you just said, love abounds. Beyond the circumstances, beyond the situations, beyond the diagnoses, whatever, love abounds. And if you can lean into it, the universe shows you that it abounds. I mean,
yes. It's really a matter of taking in what you see and feel. Even, there's a poem by David White called Everything is Waiting for You. And he talks about how the doorway opens you of things to come, and the teacup holds what you love, and how so many things show their love that we don't even recognize. That I feel like for a lot of my life, I went through life in a glaze in my mind and not actually seeing what was in front of me, not taking in the goodness or the love. The love was always there. I was so focused on somewhere else, on not having enough, so entranced by the stories of my childhood. And, I wish I could tell you that success, having a #1 New York Times bestseller, having books published, pierced that trance, but it didn't, because that was out there. I think this is an inside job we're talking about. It's not about what's out there. It's about how you see, or how I see, what's out there. So when I look at the world through shattered lenses, the world looks shattered. Even great success looks shattered. Doesn't look like success. It just, of course, being on Oprah a couple of times, that was wild and wonderful. But then in the middle of the night, I'm back to being me. She's not there. The TV isn't there. And my idea of success is only my idea. It's just me. My husband is sleeping next to me. He's not sort of like merged with my body. It's just me and how I work with what goes on or not. If I take in the goodness or not. What I practice.
What I love about what you're saying is that, I have this belief that something extraordinary beyond us loved us so much that it breathed its life into us, and it's with us always, no matter what we're going through. And you're right. It's like, you got to be with you because that's what's here. But it is inside, and understanding that you're so loved and so supported that no matter what is going on, you're held. That to me is the saving grace of my sanity.
Yes. And that's what you texted me very, very, very often during those cancer darkest days. You're being held. You're being supported. Love surrounds you. And there were times, particularly when I was getting radiation, where I would think, yeah, right. It's easy for her to say. You try getting, 12 needles with catheters of radiation into your breasts, and let's see what you say. But what I also know is that you would have said the same thing, because that's how grounded I could feel you were in that grace. So, yeah.
Well, my honor. And I really think it's why we're all on the planet, is to love and support each other. And I have one last question for you, but I want people to know how to find you, because just reading anything you wrote or being in your presence or coming to one of your retreats, whatever, is a soul feeding. So how do people find you?
They can find me first on my website, GeneenRoth.com. It's with a G, like Gertrude. I was named after my Aunt Gertrude. And so Roth with a TH.com. And everything is on there. And if you're a Facebook person, you can find me on Facebook, Geneen, facebook.com/Geneen Roth. You don't have to do the whole friends thing. You can just pop on there. And Instagram, I think people know at Geneen Roth. So those Cancer Chronicles are on there. And they are also on my website. So you can find all of them in progression on my website, and a list of my books and articles and videos and things like that.
Awesome. Run, do not walk, ladies, and get her stuff. That's all I want to say. Okay, here's my last question. What do you think is the one thing women need to know about awakening to step into their fullness?
I might sound a little bit like you. I don't know when I answer this. I would say there's a fullness and a magnificence that's already here, and that we covered up by the stories that we tell ourselves, by the narratives, by the trances we hypnotize ourselves with. So what I notice in my work with myself and in the work with my retreat students, many of whom I've been working with for 5, 10, 15 years, is that it's a sort of balancing act between the fullness, noticing the fullness of this moment, taking in the goodness of it, allowing yourself to have what you have instead of taking it away from yourself continually, and noticing the narrative you're telling yourself, I can't have it. I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough writer. I can't publish a book. I'm not like them. Whatever it is that you entrance yourself with, and you know you're in a trance when your heart starts sinking, when your stomach starts contracting, when you feel shut down or muted or wrapped in cotton batting, when you don't feel really alive. You know what it feels like to feel like you're you at your most you've come home. When you're not feeling that, question that. Ask yourself what it is you are believing, and ask yourself what is actually true. What is the truest thing you know about yourself? And what you'll come up with are statements like, I know that when I trust myself, I am guided to what I really love. And this other stuff of I should be, I shouldn't be, I don't know how to, I need to be more like them, will fall away if you keep sort of unwinding the stories until you get to that trance breaker statement. That's the work that I've been doing with my retreat students these days, trance breaking. And the work I've been doing with myself when I wake up in the middle of the night enwrapped in stories about what a failure I am.
Oh, incredible. Ladies, if you missed any of that, roll the tape back and listen to that again. Geneen, I'm so honored to walk this path with you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to see what's next for you because I know you're opening in another way to revealing yourself, and I can't wait to see what it is. Thank you so much. Really grateful.
I love you, Cynthia. You bless my life by your presence in it. Thank you. And thank you for having me on this podcast. That's what it is, a podcast, right?
A podcast.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. But anyway, thank you, thank you, thank you. And everybody who's listening, thank you for listening.
So everyone, ladies, we do these podcasts every week, and the intention, the mission is to bring to you possibilities where you can step into a field where you remember that you're magnificent, that you're divine, that you're here because you are necessary and essential. So come back. We're on iTunes, we're on Spreaker, we're on Spotify, Amazon, and on YouTube. And please subscribe and use the gifts that these women are giving you to make a better life for yourself because the world is waiting. Many blessings.